Today, I am going to talk about how to manage expectations for Amazon PPC clients. So, if you have Amazon PPC clients, you're a consultant, agency owner, work for an agency, then this will help you. Because when you can manage expectations with your clients, it's a lot less stressful, a lot less headaches, and what I call more peaceful money. You know, there's stressful money and peaceful money. Stressful money is money that comes with a lot of headaches and a lot of trouble. Peaceful money is a lot less headaches, a lot less problems. You know, you can't eliminate all problems, but just try to minimize them. So let's jump right in. First thing I want to talk about is sales. Sales. I think that you have to have a sales process in place. You have to. It's just crucial to finding the right people and working with the right people. And when you think about managing expectations, a lot of people think about, hey, you know, when it comes to managing expectations, it happens while you're working with the client. We have our systems in place so that they don't go out of scope, or like they don't ask for extra things and we don't do those things. That's like kind of the typical definition of managing expectations. But what I've learned is that managing expectations starts with sales, because it's about finding the right people to work with in two areas. Number one, you know, the right match in terms of like, you know, working together, personality, things like that. And number two, whether or not you can get them actual tangible results, you know, increase their PPC sales, lower their ACOS, things like that. So what does a good sales process look like? Well, let me go over my sales process when I started compared to now. So I started in this business 5.5 years ago. I kind of really stumbled into it. You know, basically, like I was a part of a meetup. I was actually selling on Amazon at the time. And so selling on Amazon, I was a part of a meetup in Chicago, Illinois. And, you know, I was doing like SEO for a software company. I was working full time at the time. And at this meetup, you know, I just met everybody. And one of the founder or the creator of the meetup was like,
hey man, I want you to do an Amazon like SEO PPC workshop because you've got a background in SEO, you sell on Amazon, I feel like you could provide value.
So that's what I did. I put together a presentation and I basically did a presentation. That was my lead generation process, like finding leads. I didn't think of this at the time because I wasn't as business savvy as I am now. But you know, and then at the end I was like, hey, if you want to work with me, here's my number, my email. And that's when people started asking. So I guess that's kind of like how I found leads. I guess you could say speaking. I didn't think of it that way at the time. But here's where, and I think that was actually really good for me to do. That was a good area. But, you know, my first management client, my first Amazon PPC management client, my sales process was not as good as it is now. So let's kind of go through what this looks like. So I meet up with the guy. You know, we kind of knew each other from the meetup. And, you know, he kind of knew I was kind of interested in doing the PPC management thing. And I was like,
hey, man, you know, would it be cool if we set up a meeting and I could take a look at your PPC?
That's what I asked him. So that's kind of like a sales meeting. So we meet up at a co-working space. It was in person. And we just sat next to each other in an area. I said, let me take a look at your PPC. And, you know, we kind of looked at the PPC. He was already working with a management company. I said,
Well, I could take it over for the same amount that they're charging.
It was like $120 a month. And, you know, I pretty much was like, I'll just copy their service. That's pretty much what I said because I had no experience. And I think that was actually kind of smart at the time since I didn't have any experience. But I guess like I could have been smarter, where like what should have happened was, because I didn't really know, like I just said I was going to copy their service. I didn't know whether or not I could provide more value. You know what I mean? Like I didn't know if I could do better than them. And, you know, I didn't have a sales script to go through to determine whether or not it would be a good fit. Because, you know, I didn't end up really getting good results for that first person. I think it is just lack of knowledge in the industry and sales and stuff like that. But, you know, the lesson learned here is you need to have like a forecasting mechanism or like an auditing mechanism that allows you to find where you can make improvements and how those improvements will like translate into like metrics like sales, more PPC sales, lower ACOS, things like that. And then so you need that and then you need a sales script. I can't even like I can't even like express to you how important a sales script is. And here's why. My sales process before was just like, hey, he basically, I think, worked with me because he knew me, you know what I mean? And he's like, oh, let's do it. But man, if I could go back in time, I would be like, Sean, you need to use a sales script, to find the right people so that you can provide them value, So when I did start using a sales script, when I started learning more about sales, I just, like my revenue and the money I was making just like exponentially went up because I had a process in place. And when you have a process, you don't have to think as much. You don't have to, and when you have the right process, if you have a bad process, obviously that's going to give you more headaches. But when you have the right process in place, man, it alleviates so much stress and you make more money and you just live a better life. Now, what does that mean though? You need to have a script. You need to have a script and you need to have a flow of what that looks like. Like now for me, it's like I'll do a 15-minute discovery call and then a 45-minute strategy session. And I have scripts for both of those. I have scripts. So I have a discovery call script and I have a strategy session script. And I pull those up and I read through them, to make sure that it's a good thing, that it's good to work with them. It's huge, man, because this allows you to not only learn whether or not you can provide a tangible result, but it also determines whether or not it's a good fit to work together. Let me give you an example of a not good fit. So a while back, I've done hundreds of phone calls over the past 5 years. Man, hundreds. It's just wild to think about the volume that I've talked to people in a sales context. But I had one person that I was talking to, and it was a strategy session. They booked the call on my website. We didn't do the discovery call because I have a website where people fill out a survey, things like that. But so they were qualified and got on the call. It was booked for 45 minutes, and then we just like, hey, how's it going? Called them on the dot and just said, hey man, what's going on? Just 2 to 5 minutes, quick chat. And then he goes,
hey, do you think we can make this like 10, 15 minutes? Because I've got a meeting coming up, and can we just kind of get through like straight to the questions and things like that?
And I said, hey, actually, is it cool if we reschedule the phone call? And he was on the road too. He wasn't even like near his desk. And I was like, so can we reschedule 45 minutes, to where you can be at your desk, have your computer up and we can chat for 45 minutes. And he was just like, well, why don't you just ask me the questions? Why don't you just ask me the questions? Now, keep in mind, my memory is a bit hazy on this. This was years ago. I know pretty much the outcome of it, but the details, this is kind of the gist of it. But long story short, I ended up just being like, hey man, I don't know if it's really going to be a good fit. I think I ended up answering a couple questions, but I just was like, hey man, I just don't think it's going to fit. And you know what? He was not happy. This person was not happy. Lo and behold, we didn't end up working together, which is fine. And that's how it is, because, you're just talking to tons of people and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. I have no ill will towards the person, it wasn't a priority at the time, and that's okay, because if it was, he would have been like, all right, let's sit down, or he would have trusted me. But, that's kind of like a scenario where, I had to be like, probably not, because they're not willing to follow my process. Remember, the willingness to follow your process is an indicator of whether or not that person would be good to work together, right? If they need to control everything in the beginning, then they're going to need to control everything while you're working together. But if they're able to release control and trust you as a PPC expert and say, all right, what questions do you have for me? Then guess what? That's an early indicator that when you work with that person, then they're going to trust you. They're going to be like, you know what? Yeah, let's do it. That sales script, it's like being a tour guide. Like, let's say you travel to another country and you're one of those people who's like, I'm just going to do it myself. And you're like, just try to explore on your own. I'm sure you'll do fine or whatever. But, what if you were someone who's like, I don't have the time to learn all this different stuff. I'm just going to hire a tour guide. The tour guide's going to not only know the land and take me to the cool places, they'll have all these facts and stuff. That's kind of what a sales script is. It's kind of like a tour guide to your service. You're the tour guide and they need to follow you. and they need to listen and answer questions. It's really a good precursor to whether or not you're going to have a good relationship and be able to manage expectations. I'll go over contracts. I won't go over them too much. So contracts does help with managing expectations because it allows you to put your service and what you talked about on the sales call and the expectations in word form. Now, in this industry, I have friends in the industry. I've worked with tons of clients. I even, even to this day, sometimes I use contracts, sometimes I don't. So I have friends in the industry. I have students that I work with that I teach that are in the industry as well. And really, like, whether or not you have a contract is up to you. I think it does help with putting in those expectations on document, but in this industry, it seems like having like a 3-month minimum can be quite challenging sometimes. So month-to-month contract is okay. I think it does show a level of professionalism, like having a contract. You don't necessarily need to use it, but if you do use it, it's better. But even if you don't use it, keep in mind that sales process, that sales system, the script is really what pre-qualifies whether or not a person will be a good fit for your service, so that you'd be able to manage the expectations when you work together. The next part is your services process. What does your services process look like? I mean, before I didn't have one, it was just kind of like whatever, but you don't want a whatever service process. You want to say, hey, we do weekly report emails. We do monthly calls. You need to have those details on the phone call. It depends on, it depends on like how yours is, but you want to make sure that you outline what those look like for the client so that they know what they're getting into, and negotiating those, because it's huge, man. You have to have a services process that meets their needs. But you don't want to get in a situation where, or maybe you do, I don't know. But like when you're really scaling a consulting business or an agency, you don't want to have, clients calling you every day all the time, right? Because number one, they're out of the blue, and they're not scheduled, which is what you need. And number two, it's super high touch. It prevents you from getting work done sometimes. So make sure you have a services process in place. And one thing to note is, trying to think here real quick. How many minutes we got left? A couple minutes. Real quick, got a couple minutes left. One thing you want to do is you want to make sure your service is productized, and managing expectations and selling does not stop when you close the deal. Every phone call you have, every email you send should provide them results and teach them to focus on the results. That's a big one when it comes to manage expectations. You have to teach the person that you're working with to really focus on the results and not the specific tasks and things that you're doing. It's okay to send over some detail around what you're specifically doing in terms of optimization, but you really have to have them focus on the results, because that's what they're paying you for, is results. And when they focus on the results and they can really see them, then they're going to spend less time, asking you a lot of questions and eating up a lot of your time, because you've got it focused on the results. All right, guys. Hope you enjoyed this video on how to manage expectations for Amazon PPC clients. As you know, really starts with that sales process. And I hope you're able to improve your processes and systems so that you can sign better clients and, have a better experience as a PPC consultant or agency owner. All right. Bye.